My partner of 5 years told me she no longer felt drawn to me and craved a dominant type. I responded that I got it. Then I took the job advancement she hoped her new dominant partner would secure at our firm. When she spotted me in the executive suite, her expression turned ashen, as she grasped that I had become her superior. My partner of 5 years, Sarah, broke up with me last Tuesday. We shared a home, so she at least chose to say it in person, but that was her only courteous act. She had me sit on the couch in the living area of the home I own, and delivered a monologue she had obviously practiced. She said she cared for me as an individual, but the romantic spark was gone. She mentioned she'd sensed a void for some time, and then she hit me with the devastating statement, "I'm simply not interested in you that way anymore, Michael," she said, gazing at me with a kind of detached sympathy. "I've come to see that I require a genuine leader, someone who asserts control, a real commander." The offense was so blunt, so patronizing, that I didn't feel fury right away. It was simply enlightening. I've always been a reserved individual. I'm not the most vocal person present. I don't boast. I don't need to control discussions that I guide through demonstration, via expertise. I resolve issues, I create systems that function. I had always believed she recognized and appreciated that quality in me. Evidently, I was mistaken. She viewed my subtle assurance as frailty. I didn't debate with her. I didn't become protective. I simply stared at her and anticipated the next revelation, since I knew there was additional information. She interpreted my quietness as permission to proceed. She admitted she had been developing a connection with another person, a colleague from our organization, Brad. For background, Sarah, Brad, and I all are employed at the same sizable engineering company. I'm a lead systems designer. I craft the foundational structures for our most intricate initiatives. Sarah handles project coordination, so our roles overlap somewhat. And Brad, he's a lead sales planner. He's precisely the sort of individual you'd envision when hearing the term alpha. Used seriously, he's boisterous, boldly self-assured, dons showy attire, and excels at delivering polished talks. He's pure charm. The depth, though, has always appeared dubious to me. Sarah elaborated extensively on Brad's goals and his relentless motivation. And then she disclosed the true essence. For the past 2 months, a significant new role had been available at the firm: Head of Strategic Coordination. It's a massive leap forward, a managerial position meant to connect the technical groups, project oversight, and sales planning. The new head would basically oversee all 3 of our areas. Sarah informed me with a complacent thrill that Brad was the frontrunner. She confessed she'd been assisting him in shaping his submissions, providing him confidential details from the project side to strengthen his proposal. She was fully committed to his triumph. She envisioned him landing this role as their springboard. They were set to become the fresh, influential duo in the workplace. As she explained all this, I merely sat there. And when she concluded, after she had fully explained why I fell short for her, I gazed at her and stated, in a completely steady tone, "I comprehend." She appeared somewhat taken aback by my absence of reaction, but she accepted it as agreement. She mentioned she'd require a week or 2 to locate a new residence. I simply agreed with a nod. Here's what she was unaware of. While she and Brad were scheming his ascent, upper management had been harboring grave reservations about him. They perceived what I did. Plenty of flair, but little substance. His approaches appeared impressive in a slideshow, but they frequently disregarded key technical constraints, which my group would then rush to correct. Due to this, roughly a month prior, the senior executive, a gentleman named Robert, had discreetly contacted me. He informed me that although I wasn't the clear pick from a sales angle, I was the sole contender who genuinely comprehended how all the company's elements truly interconnected. He stated the organization required a guide who could produce outcomes, not merely assurances. He presented me with the head position. I was uncertain. I relished the direct involvement. I'm a designer, a constructor. I wasn't certain I desired to enter high-level administration and politics. I informed Robert the first needed time to ponder it. I didn't bring it up to Sarah, as our bond was already strained, and I didn't wish to introduce a complicated professional element. My uncertainty, my wish to evaluate things rationally, was exactly what she perceived as a deficiency in drive. But following her address, after she labeled me inadequate and showcased her new leader before me, all my doubts evaporated. Declining the advancement now would confirm her whole distorted viewpoint. Embracing it was the sole option remaining. It was no longer about professional growth. It was about personal dignity. The following day, I entered Robert's workspace. He glanced up, astonished to see me. "Michael," he said, "what's the matter?" "Robert," I answered, "I've reflected on your proposal. If it's still available, I accept it." A broad grin of ease appeared on his face. "That's the finest update I've received this month," he said, grasping my hand solidly. "We were optimistic you'd decide positively. The formal notice will be sent in a firm-wide message on Monday morning." "Congratulations." I passed the remainder of the day in a composed concentration. When I arrived home, Sarah was present, already gathering some of her items. She was singing softly. She informed me she planned a festive meal with Brad on Monday evening, following the major reveal. She even dared to tap my arm and say, "No concerns, Michael. I've already discussed it with Brad. Once he'll ensure you're placed on some of the key upcoming endeavors. He truly appreciates your expertise in tech." I simply gazed at her and agreed that that's considerate of you, I replied. This weekend was peaceful. I've relocated her belongings from the primary bedroom to the spare room. She assumes it's merely me requiring distance. She remains happily oblivious to the message set to reach the whole firm's inboxes at 9 on Monday morning. She believes she's aligning with an emerging talent. She has no clue she's on the verge of meeting her new superior. First update, Monday morning came with an odd feeling of certainty. The vibe in the residence was heavy with an uncomfortable, strained quiet. Sarah, though, appeared to be soaring on a wave of arrogant contentment. She was chattier than she'd been in ages, rambling about the special dinner she and Brad had arranged for that night. As we prepared for the office, she positioned herself in the bathroom entrance while I shaved and offered an unrequested suggestion. "You know, Michael," she began, her voice laced with pretended worry. "You're an excellent designer, likely the top in the firm, but you lack that commanding presence. You ought to observe Brad. See how he dominates a space. Could benefit you eventually." I just cleaned my blade, dried my face, and glanced at her via the reflection. "I'll remember that," I said. We traveled to the workplace in individual vehicles, a habit we'd begun recently as the gap between us widened. I reached my station at 8:30, organized a few outdated documents, and geared up for the day. Sarah was at her spot, conversing animatedly on the call, undoubtedly with Brad. At precisely 9 a.m., a fresh email alert appeared on my display. It did on all. The title was straightforward. Notice, new head of strategic coordination. I didn't access it. I had no need. Instead, I observed Sarah. I witnessed her select the email, her features radiant with victorious anticipation. I saw her gaze skim the opening sentence, and then I observed as all color vanished from her complexion. She shifted from vibrant and beaming to a ghostly, unwell pallor in roughly 3 seconds. Her lips parted slightly. She blinked and reviewed the email. Then she reviewed it once more from the other side of the office. I could notice her fingers begin to shake. She gradually raised her head, and her eyes swept the area until they fixed on mine. I didn't grin. I didn't boast. I simply maintained her stare with an entirely impartial look. The view of me serene and already engaged in tasks appeared to shatter her daze. She leaped from her seat and strode toward my station. Multiple people turned to observe her. She advanced with such intensity that she was almost quivering with fury. She halted before my station. Her hands balled up. "What is this?" she whispered harshly, her tone unsteady and quaking. "This must be a prank, correct? How did you pull this off? You took this from him." Her volume was increasing, and she was creating a spectacle. Folks were staring outright now. This was the instant. This was where the fresh hierarchy would be established. I gradually rose, gazing down at her since she was several inches shorter. I maintained my tone soft, compelling her to incline a bit to listen. An understated dominance tactic. "Sarah," I said composedly, "this isn't the moment or location for this discussion. My office is always available, but I anticipate you to behave appropriately. We have a project review session set for 10. I'll meet you in the primary meeting space, then we can address your issues regarding the project flow at that point." The hue returned to her features in a heated, furious blush. She was at a loss for words. She had approached to challenge her former partner, the individual she had recently judged as feeble. She was now being spoken to as an underling by her new overseer. She lingered there for a few additional moments, stumbling over words, before she appeared to recognize that everyone was witnessing her improper eruption. She pivoted and marched back to her station. On the opposite side of the structure, I could only picture the collapse Brad was experiencing. His whole approach, his entire persona at the firm was constructed on boldness and the image of being the upcoming choice. Now, he hadn't merely forfeited the advancement, he lost it to me. That night, the clash at the residence was precisely what I foresaw. She was awaiting me when I entered. She charged me with being a scheming, spiteful deceiver. She claimed I had orchestrated this from the start to embarrass her. I allowed her to express until she exhausted her energy. When she concluded, I finally responded. I didn't do this against you, Sarah. I did this for my own sake. You clarified exactly what you seek in a companion. You stated you desired a leader, a commander, someone who seizes control. You selected based on your view of power. It looks like you simply supported the incorrect contender. I moved by her and headed to the kitchen for some water. You're accurate about one aspect, however, I went on, facing away. The situation has shifted. It's entirely unsuitable for you to reside here any longer. This is my property. I require you to secure a new location. You have 7 days. The defiance left her then, substituted by an emerging dread. The truth of her circumstances was overwhelming her simultaneously. Her dominant partner had faltered. She had forfeited the influential duo vision. And now she was forfeiting her residence. Her scheme had not only collapsed, it had recoiled in the most dramatic fashion possible. It's been 14 days since my elevation, and the consequences have been both expected and, in a sense, gratifying. The initial week focused on solidifying my command, and Sarah and Brad didn't simplify it. But their efforts to weaken me only reinforced my standing. My initial formal step as head was to organize a gathering with the leaders of all sectors now under my supervision. This naturally encompassed Sarah, standing for her coordination group, and Brad, standing for sales planning. I aimed to examine the full project lineup to spot dangers and prospects. Brad entered the gathering with his typical arrogance, but it was fragile that he attempted to behave as though nothing had altered. Sarah positioned herself at the distant end of the table, mute, avoiding my gaze. The primary subject of the gathering was a significant fresh program that Brad had been promoting for months. It was his creation, the foundation of his proposal for the head role. Sarah had been its strongest advocate, making sure her coordinators gave it priority. When Brad's opportunity to speak arrived, he delivered his standard performance. He guided us through a smooth display packed with striking jargon and hopeful estimates. When he wrapped up, he surveyed the space, awaiting praise. Instead, I commented. "Appreciate it, Brad," I said balancedly. "The estimates are definitely bold. Nevertheless, I've dedicated the weekend to assessing the essential framework needed to back this plan. Could you please go to slide 17, where you detail the information merging procedure?" He struggled with the controller, a hint of doubt on his features. He displayed the slide. As I understand it, I proceeded, addressing the whole group. Your plan depends on instant information alignment between our outdated stock system and the fresh online analysis tool. Yet, the outdated system's interface has a strict limit of 1,000 inquiries per hour. Your outline, as shown here, would demand at least 10,000 inquiries per hour in busy periods. The setup as it stands cannot handle this. It will collapse. I wasn't confrontational. I merely presented realities. I outlined facts. I revealed the fundamental defect in his complete plan, a defect that any person with profound technical insight would have noticed, but which he, in his sales-oriented realm, had entirely overlooked. The space was hushed. Brad's features turned crimson. He had no response. He mumbled something regarding his tech advisors guaranteeing it would function. "Then your advisors were incorrect," I said plainly. "We must pause this program until a thorough structural evaluation. I want a practical strategy on my desk in 14 days, not a presentation file. Sarah, kindly instruct your group to reduce priority on all assets assigned to this and shift them to the Eagle program, starting now." Sarah merely agreed with a nod, her features drained. She had to remain there and openly disassemble the exact program she had supported, the one intended to be her and Brad's path to success. In a single 10-minute interaction, I had revealed Brad's inadequacy and re-established authority over the firm's path, all by just fulfilling my duties. Their subsequent action was to attempt to gather allies. Sarah started grumbling to her office acquaintances, folks she used to dine with, about how difficult and uneasy I was rendering matters. She strongly suggested that I was fostering an antagonistic work setting, utilizing my fresh role to penalize her for our separation. It rebounded dramatically. The individuals in our firm, particularly in the technical area, prioritized skill above everything. They had all witnessed Brad's glossy displays and had all been compelled to manage the chaotic aftermath of his defective schemes. They admired my efforts. They observed me terminate a poor program and preserve the firm vast sums in squandered assets. They didn't perceive a resentful former partner. They perceived a capable guide reorganizing. Sarah's grievances merely portrayed her as improper and small-minded. Then arrived the genuinely underhanded maneuver. Overcome in their roles, they chose to assault my standing. One of my prior initiatives, an intricate program revision I had individually designed, was in its concluding rollout stage. Late one evening last week, somebody accessed the system and modified a vital code segment. It was a delicate adjustment, one that wouldn't trigger an instant failure but would generate a severe information distortion problem about 7 days later. It was crafted to appear as if I had embedded a delayed flaw in the system just prior to my elevation. It was a straightforward bid to portray me as unskilled to upper management. It was an awkward, frantic action. The next day, in a standard inspection, I promptly detected the irregularity in the code. It wasn't my creation. The reasoning was careless. I didn't alarm. I didn't even inform anyone initially. Instead, I proceeded straight to our firm's digital security records. Each alteration, each access is monitored and dated. It required less than 60 minutes to locate it. The improper modification occurred at 10:47 p.m. The prior evening. It was recorded under temporary managerial access, and the network address from which the access happened was linked directly to a terminal on the 4th level. Brad's terminal. I now possessed solid, irrefutable evidence of intentional company disruption. He wasn't simply unskilled. He was a danger, and I had captured him. Last update, it has been 90 days since my elevation, and the concluding elements of this episode have settled. The tale of Brad and Sarah at our organization is concluded. After uncovering the proof of disruption, I did not challenge Brad or Sarah personally. That would have been disorderly and improper. Instead, I behaved like the head they charged me with not being. I assembled my proof, the digital security records displaying the network address, the timing of the unauthorized alteration, the initial code compared to the changed code, and a concise objective overview of the possible harm it would have inflicted. Then, I arranged a session with my superior, Robert, and the leader of personnel resources. I presented the proof, calmly and impartially. I didn't portray it as a private matter. I portrayed it as a grave and intentional violation of company protection and work behavior. I informed them, a staff member in a high position deliberately attempted to disrupt a vital firm initiative. This poses a threat to our operations. The response was precisely what you'd anticipate from a large enterprise confronting an evident internal risk. Personnel launched a complete official probe right away. Considering the electronic proof, it was a straightforward resolution. Brad was summoned to a session with personnel and legal. He evidently attempted to refute it initially, but when they showed him the records linking the act directly to his terminal at a period when video evidence displayed him in the premises, his account crumbled. He was dismissed for reason, effective instantly. He was accompanied out of the premises by guards, holding his items in a paper container. Being terminated for severe wrongdoing is a permanent stain on a profession, one that's extremely hard to overcome. The probe inevitably directed to Sarah. Although there was no direct evidence she joined in the disruption, her recognized connection with Brad, her open eruption on the day of my elevation, her grievances to peers about me generating an antagonistic setting depicted a very evident scenario. She was determined to be part of a sequence of improper conduct that was adding to a harmful work climate. She wasn't terminated, but her outcome was nearly more severe. She received a ultimate documented caution and was shifted sideways to another section, a administrative obscurity of the firm that manages old profiles. Her coordination title stayed, but the initiatives were insignificant. Her professional advancement at the firm was forever halted. She was career-wise separated, performing a stagnant role, deprived of any sway or status. The influential duo was done. Brad was jobless and shamed. Sarah was marginalized and embarrassed. The rumor mill, as usual, completed the details. Brad is supposedly still having difficulty securing a fresh role. The account of why he departed our firm has, naturally, circulated in our field. Sarah endured another 30 days in her fresh position before she silently left. She couldn't manage the everyday shame of her reduction or the stares from previous peers who knew the entire account. The most recent I learned, she had relocated from the town. As for me, I'm succeeding. My sector is more productive than before. We've effectively initiated 2 major initiatives, and the group spirit is elevated. The admiration I receive from my peers is gained not via boisterous speech or hollow appeal, but via consistent guidance and demonstrated achievements. My efforts communicate independently. Reflecting, Sarah was correct about one element. She said she required a leader, but her notion of what that entailed was entirely incorrect. She was attracted to the most noisy, most ostentatious show-off in the space, confusing his audacity for power. She neglected to grasp that true power, true guidance, isn't about the clamor you create. It's about the bases you establish, the challenges you overcome, and the subtle assurance that stems from recognizing you are skilled and in command of your own path. She pursued her leader, and ultimately, she discovered one. She simply never comprehended it was the man she was abandoning.